What if I told you that the next 30 years of your life will not be decided by luck, not by talent, not by connections, but by the next 30 minutes you choose to control? 30 minutes. That's less than one episode of a show. Less than the time you scroll without thinking. Less than the time you spend worrying about things that haven't even happened yet. But here's the truth most people will never accept. Your future is built in small, invisible blocks of disciplined time. Not in dramatic breakthroughs. Not in overnight success. Not in one big moment where everything magically changes. It's built in 30 intentional minutes every single day. 30 minutes where you silence the noise. 30 minutes where you train your mind instead of letting the world train it for you. 30 minutes where you work on your goals instead of just talking about them. 30 minutes where you choose growth over comfort. Because comfort is expensive. It costs you your potential. It costs you your confidence. It costs you the freedom you say you want. But discipline? Discipline pays dividends for decades. Imagine this. If you invest just 30 focused minutes a day into mastering your mind, sharpening your skills, and building your future, that's over 180 hours a year. Over 5,400 hours in 30 years. 5,000 hours of deliberate growth. Do you understand what that does to a human being? That transforms an average life into an extraordinary one. The difference between the person who regrets the next 30 years and the person who dominates them will not be intelligence. It will not be background. It will not be perfect timing. It will be who had the courage to control 30 minutes when nobody was watching. Because mindfulness gives you clarity. Productivity gives you momentum. And discipline gives you freedom. If you can own 30 minutes, you can own your mornings. If you can own your mornings, you can own your days. If you can own your days, you can shape your decades. So today is not about motivation. It's about decision. A decision that the next 30 minutes of your life are not ordinary. They are the foundation of the next 30 years. And what you choose to do in them will decide who you become. 30 focused minutes may not look powerful on the surface, but that is exactly why they change lives. We underestimate small blocks of time because they don't feel dramatic. They don't feel heroic. They don't feel like the kind of effort that rewrites destiny. But history is not shaped by dramatic bursts of effort. It is shaped by consistent, controlled moments of intention repeated over years. 30 focused minutes a day is not about doing more. It is about doing what matters without distraction, without negotiation, without compromise. When you sit down for 30 truly focused minutes, something powerful happens. You reclaim authority over your attention. In a world that constantly pulls your mind in 1,000 directions, focus has become rare. And what is rare becomes valuable. Those 30 minutes become a training ground where you teach your brain discipline. You tell yourself, for this time, nothing else exists. No notifications, no scrolling, no drifting thoughts. Just one clear objective and your full presence. This is how mastery begins. Not with long, exhausting hours that burn you out. Not with unrealistic routines that collapse after a week. Mastery begins with a manageable commitment you can repeat tomorrow and the next day and the next year. 30 minutes is small enough to be sustainable, yet powerful enough to create momentum. And momentum is everything. Most people fail not because they lack ambition, but because they lack consistency. They wait for long stretches of free time. They wait for motivation to strike. They wait for perfect conditions. But the person who wins understands that progress does not require perfect conditions. It requires protected time. 30 minutes becomes sacred. It becomes non-negotiable. It becomes a promise you keep to yourself. Over time, those sessions compound. Skills sharpen. Thoughts become clearer. Confidence grows. You begin to see yourself differently. You're no longer someone who talks about goals. You're someone who works on them daily. And that identity shift is more powerful than any external reward. 30 focused minutes also eliminate overwhelm. Instead of staring at massive goals and feeling paralyzed, you break them down into daily action. You don't need to conquer the entire mountain today. You just need to climb for 30 minutes. And when you do that consistently, the mountain moves beneath your feet. The magic is not in the duration. The magic is in the depth of attention. Because when your mind is fully engaged, 30 minutes can produce more progress than 3 distracted hours. And when repeated daily, those minutes become the quiet architect of a future most people only dream about. Freedom is often misunderstood. People think freedom comes from money, status, or escaping responsibility. But real freedom is built on discipline. It is built on the small decisions you make daily when no one is watching. Small disciplines may look insignificant in the moment, but over time, they create massive freedom that most people will never experience. Every time you wake up when you said you would, every time you choose to focus instead of scroll, every time you keep a promise to yourself, you are laying a brick. One brick does not look impressive. One disciplined action does not change your life overnight. But stack those bricks daily, and you build something powerful, self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of freedom. When you lack discipline, you become controlled by impulse. You say you will start tomorrow. You say you will try again next week. You react to emotions instead of leading them. That is not freedom. That is dependence on mood, on comfort, on external validation. But when you practice small disciplines consistently, you take control back from your impulses. You prove to yourself that you can act regardless of how you feel. And that ability changes everything. Small disciplines also reduce chaos. A planned morning prevents a rush day. A focused work session prevents last-minute stress. A few minutes of reflection prevent years of regret. These small actions compound into clarity. And clarity removes anxiety because you know where you are going and why you are moving. Massive freedom does not appear suddenly. It grows quietly. The freedom to choose your career. The freedom to manage your time. The freedom to say no to what drains you and yes to what builds you. These freedoms are earned through habits that once felt inconvenient. The discipline to learn when others relax. The discipline to save when others spend. The discipline to train your mind when others let theirs wander. At first, discipline feels restrictive. It feels like you are limiting yourself. But in reality, you are investing in options. The more disciplined you become, the more doors open. You gain skills. You gain confidence. You gain stability. And stability gives you leverage. Leverage gives you choice. And choice is the true definition of freedom. The world rewards those who can delay gratification. Those who can endure short-term discomfort for long-term gain. Those who understand that comfort today often creates limitation tomorrow. But discipline today creates independence tomorrow. Small disciplines may seem ordinary, but practiced daily, they transform into extraordinary freedom that shapes the direction of your entire life before you ever master a skill, a business, a craft, or a career. You must master the space between your ears. Because your mind is either your greatest ally or your greatest obstacle. It is the control center of your decisions, your emotions, your focus, and your resilience. And if you do not learn to lead it, it will lead you. Most people try to change their outer world without first understanding their inner one. They chase opportunities but ignore their thought patterns. They set goals but never question the beliefs that shape their actions. They want better results but carry the same mindset that created their current reality. That is why progress feels inconsistent. Because you cannot outperform the mind that is constantly working against you. Mastering your mind begins with awareness. It begins with noticing your thoughts instead of automatically believing them. Not every thought deserves your trust. Not every doubt deserves your attention. Not every fear deserves your obedience. When you develop the ability to pause and observe your thinking, you create space. And in that space, you gain power. With awareness comes control. You begin to redirect negative self-talk. You replace, "I can't" with "I'm learning." You replace "this is too hard" with "this is training." You stop reacting emotionally to every challenge and start responding strategically. That shift alone separates those who stay stuck from those who grow. Your mind also determines your consistency. Motivation fades. Excitement fades. But a trained mind stays steady. It shows up even when energy is low. It continues even when results are slow. It understands that progress is rarely loud or glamorous. It is quiet, repetitive, and sometimes boring. But the disciplined mind embraces that process instead of resisting it. When you master your mind, distractions lose their grip. You stop being controlled by comparison. You stop being shaken by criticism. You stop being paralyzed by perfectionism. Instead, you focus on execution. You focus on growth. You focus on what you can control in the present moment. The world will always be unpredictable. Circumstances will change. Challenges will appear. But when your mind is stable, your direction remains steady. You may not control every outcome, but you control your effort. You control your attitude. You control your response. And that control creates confidence. True success is not built by those who never face doubt. It is built by those who manage doubt without surrendering to it. It is built by those who train their thoughts daily, who guard their focus, who choose discipline over impulse. Because once you master your mind, the external world becomes something you navigate with intention instead of something that controls you. Productivity is not about doing more things. It is not about filling every hour of your day with activity. It is not about rushing from task to task just to feel important. True productivity is a lifestyle built on clarity, intention, and consistent execution. It is about aligning your daily actions with your long-term vision so that every effort moves you forward instead of just keeping you busy. Most people confuse busyness with progress. They answer emails, attend meetings, scroll for research, and end the day exhausted but unchanged. That is motion without direction. Real productivity begins when you decide what truly matters. It requires you to define your priorities clearly and eliminate what does not serve them. When you treat productivity as a lifestyle, you stop reacting to the day and start designing it. This lifestyle begins with ownership of your time. You understand that time is not something you find. It is something you allocate. You choose where your energy goes. You create structure around your goals. Instead of waiting for motivation, you rely on systems. Instead of depending on willpower, you depend on habits. That shift removes chaos and replaces it with momentum. Productivity as a lifestyle also means protecting your focus. In a world full of distractions, attention has become one of the most valuable resources you possess. Every notification, every interruption, every unnecessary commitment steals a piece of that resource. When you decide to live productively, you become selective. You say no more often. You guard your peak hours. You create environments that support deep work instead of constant distraction. It also requires balance. Sustainable productivity is not about burning out. It is about managing your energy wisely. You prioritize rest as much as effort. You understand that recovery sharpens performance. When you sleep well, move your body, and clear your mind, you increase the quality of your output. Productivity becomes less about hours worked and more about value created. Over time, this lifestyle reshapes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries to be productive and start seeing yourself as someone who executes consistently. That identity builds confidence. You trust yourself to follow through. You trust yourself to make progress daily. And that trust fuels even greater discipline. When productivity becomes a lifestyle, success stops feeling accidental. It becomes predictable, not because life becomes easy, but because your habits become strong. You're no longer chasing quick results. You are building systems that support growth for years. And with each intentional day, you reinforce a standard that shapes not only what you accomplish, but who you become. Most people drift into the future. They hope the next 5 years will somehow be better than the last 5. They assume growth will happen automatically with time. But time by itself does not improve your life. Time only multiplies who you already are. If you are intentional, time expands your success. If you are careless, time expands your regret. Designing the next 30 years requires a decision to stop drifting and start directing. Intentional action begins with clarity. You cannot design a future you have never defined. What kind of person do you want to become? What values will guide your decisions? What skills will you master? What kind of freedom do you want to experience? These questions are not philosophical luxuries. They are blueprints. Without them, you build randomly. With them, you build strategically. When you act with intention, your daily habits connect to a larger vision. You're not just reading, you are developing expertise. You're not just saving money, you are creating options. You are not just exercising, you're protecting long-term health and energy. Each small action becomes meaningful because it serves a bigger design. That meaning fuels consistency, even when progress feels slow. Designing your next 30 years also means thinking long-term while acting short-term. You hold a powerful vision in your mind, but you execute in manageable steps. You focus on what you can control today, knowing that today is a building block for decades ahead. This prevents overwhelm. Instead of being intimidated by the size of your dreams, you break them into daily commitments. Intentional action requires courage. It requires saying no to distractions that do not align with your future. It requires discipline when comfort calls your name. It requires patience when results are not immediate. But every time you choose alignment over impulse, you strengthen your future position. You move from reacting to life to shaping it. The most powerful part of intentional living is identity transformation. Over years, your repeated choices redefine who you are. You become someone who plans ahead, someone who thinks strategically, someone who follows through. That identity creates opportunities, attracts trust, and builds confidence that cannot be shaken easily. 30 years from now, you will not remember random distractions. You will remember the standards you set and the commitments you honored. The future is not an accident waiting to happen. It is a design waiting to be executed. And it starts with what you choose to do next. So if this message moved you even slightly, like, comment, and subscribe.